After a week of huffing and puffing about a mining company's millions, over the weekend Gina Rinehart said enough's enough. She walked away from the offer to sponsor Australia's national netball team, the Diamonds. And it was this line from her statement that I reckon said it all. It's unnecessary, she said, for sporting organisations to be used for social or political causes. There are more targeted and genuine ways to progress social or political causes without virtue signalling or for self-publicity. Fair enough, who can blame her? After all, it might have Netball Australia's $15 million in sponsorship down, but it's cost them a lot, I think, in terms of how ordinary Australians see the sport, and ordinary Australians don't want to see politics infect their sport. But it's not just netball, we've seen it for years in the AFL and Cricket Australia too, particularly under new captain, the climate warrior, Pat Cummins. Senator Bridget McKenzie, former sports minister, she joins me now from Canberra. Bridget, I'm going to get across some of the regional and rural issues that are coming up, likely for country Australians in the budget tomorrow night. But let's start with this story here in relation to Netball Australia. You can't blame Gina Rinehart, can you, for walking away after the players behaved as they did?
Yeah, look, I've sat around as a former sports minister arguing for precious taxpayers' funds to support our elite athletes and indeed our community sport across the country, and it's hard to come by. And to think that elite athletes would turn their back on very, very generous support. I mean, Ms Reinhardt, you know, has supported our AIS teams heading into the Olympics. We've seen our swim team, our row team actually benefit from her generosity, and you know, I think she was very genuine in her sponsorship offer. And rather than expecting the taxpayer to always continually pick up the tab on these things, we need to make sure that when private philanthropy money is there to be used by our elite athletes and more broadly through community sport, we need to encourage people to take that up, because you know, young athletes want to be inspired by our elites, and by making sure that they're properly funded, that's how that can actually happen.
Spot on. I made the point a bit earlier, Bridget, that netball is one of those sports that doesn't have a male league counterpart that can help cross-subsidise it. You know, we know women's football, AFL football, is cross-subsidised by the men's game. It is the largest participation sport in the country. And they've lost her $15 million. We learned today they're down $25 million. I want to hope no government, taxpayer, state or federal, is going to have to step in and bail them out.
Well, this is going to be the challenge. You're right, Peter. This is an incredibly popular sport right across the country, and our young athletes look to the Diamonds and look to our, obviously, Netball Australia's more state-based teams to really get their inspiration, and that's what they aspire to be. Now, those sort of level of investment doesn't happen. It's not cheap, as we've seen with the $15 million. It's not cheap, and it needs to, if it's not going to come from the private sector, where is it going to come from? And I think it's incredibly disappointing that this is broken down. It seems the decision by the players was made on comments not made by Ms Reinhardt or any of the cultural issues within the companies that were putting up the money that she has a controlling interest in, was rather comments made generation ago. And, you know, are we going to judge the Labor Party of today by Arthur Caldwell's racist comments of the past? Of course we're not. It seems in this current day and age, what a previous pastor may have said, what a previous staff member or stakeholder may have said, a previous parent may have said, is suddenly being judged in the present, which is not only unfair, but is going to lead to, you know, really terrible outcomes, I think, for the sport itself. And then you've sort of got the decisions being made by the likes of Cricket Australia's captain, where it isn't about previous comments, it's about suddenly the very industries that underpin our national economy, like the resources industry, are actually somehow not fit to sponsor our sporting clubs and are akin to tobacco companies of the past. I mean, it is just an incredible misrepresentation of the contribution they make to our society and our community and our economy.
Yeah. And of course, it's mining companies that mine the iron ore, that makes the steel, that builds the stadiums, and it's energy companies that keep the lights on for the cricket games like we had here, the terrific game in Melbourne last night. Right, let's go to regional Australia, because tomorrow night in the budget we're going to see the weight of regional Australia help our bottom line. It'll be what we send overseas and export, both in terms of food and fibre, of course, but also all of our energy and mineral exports. But you're also going to be king hit, because all of that money in the budget that's there for infrastructure projects like roads, hospitals, all those sorts of things for people that live in the regions, that money's going to be taken away, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. I mean, today's really confirmed our worst fears, that it's going to be rural and regional Australians who take the king hit from Catherine King and the Labor Party in tomorrow night's budget. They've not only had windfall gains of in excess of $100 billion to the bottom line tomorrow night that they'll be, revealing, which is on the back of resources industry exports, iron ore, coal and gas, plus increased tax receipts on the back of low unemployment. Thank you, Coalition Government. But it is not addressing the structural issues in the budget. It is actually just taking one hit to the regions. And you're right, it is medical training facilities that we'd funded. It is pushing out key roads in not just regional areas, but indeed in capital cities. And it just shows the disrespect and dishonesty of this Labor government. If you don't live in Melbourne, Brisbane or Sydney, they don't care about the future prosperity of you and your family, and the hypocrisy is laid bare. They care more about Daniel Andrews' re-election campaign in my home state of Victoria, stumping up $2.2 billion for him, for his pet project, which hasn't gone through Infrastructure Australia or hasn't gone, through any serious business case proposal, and is going to be rural and regional communities, the 9 million of us who live out there, that are going to take it in the neck on behalf of Jim Chalmers and Katie Gallagher.
Just on the Victorian election before we go, and briefly, a lot of chatter tonight that the Lib Dems, who say they're the Freedom Party, may in fact be preferencing Labor in the November state election. Do you know any more?
Look, Peter, if that rumour is true, it's an indictment on the Liberal Democrats. The one MP they do have lives out in the regions. His office is in where the city I live in Wodonga. And if Daniel Andrews' contempt for regional Victorians, and not just locking us up for no COVID, shutting down businesses, not repairing our roads, being slow to respond on the floods, I could go on and on and on. If the Lib Dems think doing a deal with Daniel Andrews is the way they're going to sneak back their MP back into office, it shows where their true allegiance lies. It's to holding positions and not their philosophy.
Senator McKenzie, thank you.